First of all, we came down here for South by Southwest Film Festival, but now it seems like it's morphed into the music festival, and I am super psyched to be doing a panel for the music festival. So I'd like to thank the music festival for setting up the panel today. I made a film, for those of you that don't know, called Paul Williams Still Alive, which is playing today, I believe, at 3:30 at the Paramount, if you haven't got a chance to see it. And I made the film because when I was a kid, I was a huge Paul Williams fan. I used to see him on The Tonight Show. After my parents fell asleep, I'd stay up and I'd see him on game shows, and I'd see him on Mike Douglas. And I really connected to Paul because he was so funny and irreverent, but I also connected to so many of the songs that he wrote. I didn't know as a kid I was connecting to songs about depression like Rainy Days and Mondays, or that I was connecting to lyrics like Day After Day, I face a world of strangers where I don't belong, I'm not that strong, but at 11 years old, that's how I felt. So when I found out a few years ago that Paul, in fact, wasn't dead, I thought I have to find him. And I have to try and get him to make a film. Also with us today on the panel, is Chris Caswell, Paul's band leader for the 30 years, who plays quite a big part in the movie, if you haven't seen it. And perhaps lurking somewhere in the background is Paul's manager, Nancy Lewis. So it also plays a part in the film. I thought today it would be kind of cool, Paul, to just talk about your work specifically that you did for hire for television and the movies, because it's really interesting that so many songs that mean so much to me and mean a lot to other people started as paid gigs.
Yeah, well, first of all, I love movies. I was an actor. Before I started writing songs, I was an actor, and I played kids. And I looked like a kid till you put me next to a real kid, and I looked like a kid with a hangover. And it was difficult to cast. I mean, the only times I ever got cast in movies, and there were a couple of big ones, was when they needed somebody over 18 to play somebody under 18. So I wound up playing like a 13-year-old when I was in my 20s in The Loved One. Thank you. I made movies that and made albums. Even my family didn't buy it. My career in a pause. But no, The Loved One was an interesting movie. They advertised as the motion picture was something to offend everyone. It was about the funeral business. Then 2 years later, just like that, I got a movie called The Chase, where I worked several months on it. And I played a 15-year-old movie starring Marlon Brando, Robert Redford, and Robert Duvall, and little Paul Williams. And it was like, this is going to make my career. This is going to let me be the star I know God wants me to be. The natural leading man that will emerge. It happened for Mickey Rooney. It will happen for me. And the movie came out, and I'm basically not that. I have like 2 lines. He's going to need a better lawyer than your daddy. Build a career out of something like that. But what happened that was important on that film is that I shared a dressing room with a guy that had a guitar, and I picked up his guitar, and I started kind of plunking, and he said, "That's a Martin. Don't touch it. Go get your own." I went out and I bought. This shows you how much I knew about music at the time. I bought a really nice little tiny saddle guitar, and I quickly painted it with flowers and everything because I thought it would look better, totally changing the sound. But I started doodling. I became a chronic doodler, and I found a place to put all this stuff in the center of my chest, which rolled out as very kind of innocent, very, very simple, what I call ouch mommy songs. They were, the codependent anthems. I'm sorry, it's what I wrote. I won't last today without you. It's not really a healthy thought. Think about it, So.
Well, yeah, I mean, it blows me away that so many songs that mean so much to me. And I'm just going to skip around, and at the end, if you guys want to talk about anything, we can talk about anything. But first of all, one of the first early gigs Paul got was he got hired to do a bank commercial for an ad agency in San Francisco. You want to talk about that a little, which actually wound up producing a very famous song.
I'll talk about a lucky break into metaphor and actuality. There's a great writer named Tony Asher Tony Asher wrote the lyrics that God Only Knows. A wonderful writer, worked a lot with Brian Wilson. And he got the job to write a commercial for a bank called Crocker Bank. He broke his hand skiing. Lucky great. And he called Roger Nichols, who was my partner writing at A&M Records, who were staff writers, cranking out songs for whoever would record them. Nothing making it into the singles category. Never hearing our music on the air. And Tony called me, he said, I'm on pain pills, I can't move my hand, I can't do this. I've recommended you guys. So we got the call, and it essentially was like what we now call a music video, or what we used to call it was a young couple getting married, riding off into the sunset after the reception, and it said, you got a long way to go, we'd like to help you get there to Crocker Bank. I sang it, Roger and I wrote it in the afternoon, it was We've Only Just Begun. So,
You want to sing a little?
sing a little of it. You know how it goes? We've only just begun to live. White lace and promises, a kiss for luck, and we're on our way.
That's great.
With the kiss in the commercial, we had to catch the kiss and all. So wrote the song. I get a phone call from Richard Carpenter. There's a great scene in the film from the movie about the Carpenters where he can't sleep and he's watching the commercial. He goes, "Wow, that could be a hit song." His mom says, "Here, take one of these. It'll help you sleep." What is it? What is it? Oh, it's something called a Quaalude. Evidently, it'll help you sleep.
Yeah.
And then I just thought of something really hilarious that I dare not say on the air. So.
Well, let me ask you, was Phantom of the Paradise the first film that you wrote songs for?
No, the first film I wrote songs for was a movie called Cinderella Liberty, and it was scored by John Williams.
Right, and that was your first Oscar nomination.
First Oscar nomination. I wrote like 4 or 5 songs for it, and one of them was Hello. Such a simple way to start a love affair. Should I jump right in and say how much I care? It's like we're wind-up people. Yeah, he mentions that would you take me for a madman, for a simple-hearted clown? One who's nice to be around. It was a gorgeous melody by John Williams, and for a great film that starred James Caan and Marsha Mason.
Yes.
It was my first nomination. Unfortunately, the Oscars were fixed that year, so I didn't win.
And were you like
Joking.
Were you blown away that you got nominated?
Oh my
for
God! I mean, you go to the Oscars and it's like, that's Gregory Peck over there, that's Kirk Douglas over there, and it's just, for this little kid from Omaha, Nebraska, who used to sit in the front row of the movies theater and look straight up at Mickey Rooney and Judy Garland. It was a spectacular thing to be a part of that community.
Yeah. And then Phantom. I don't know if there are any Phantom fans here. I mean, it's crazy. I didn't really know Phantom at all until I started doing this film. The first place I filmed Paul was an event called Phantom Palooza up in Canada, where they were crazed Phantom fans, and it was like Elvis in Hawaii. It was like the Beatles at Chase Stadium. People were nuts to see Paul. But I discovered some songs that were mind-numbingly beautiful.
I had to wait for that beautiful. It was mind-numbingly.
Well, actually, before I talk about the songs, what about working with De Palma, and how did the whole thing happen? And because you star in the film, you wrote the songs, the whole thing.
Well, it started out as Phantom of the Fillmore, and Brian De Palma went to A&M Records. He said, "I'm looking for somebody to write the songs," and I wound up with a gig as somebody to write the songs. It was and the music that I was known for, because by then I'd had a few hits, but the music I was known for was pretty soft, kind of sentimental, Hallmark card lyrics, Paulie Williams, We've Only Just Begun, old-fashioned love song for Three Dog Night, stuff like that. So what I was, all of a sudden I had a chance to do is, first of all, satirize some music that I loved. I mean, in the story, we satirized the Beach Boys and the Sha Na Na, the kind of music of the 50s, and then created what would hopefully be a kind of a rock of the spheres, but what was kind of a glam rock approach and all. But as he watched me work, he started grinning, and he went, you could play the Phantom, and I went, no, I'm not big enough to play the Phantom. I'm also not good enough to be effective acting with one eye because the Phantom wears a mask. But there was something about Swan, and as we began to work together, he said, you know, there's something about you that there's kind of a little Phil Spector thing that maybe we could, you know.
Yeah.
It was a compliment in those days. So I think, but he asked me to step in front of the camera and play the part. And what I loved about it is, I was afraid if I played Winslow that it would look like I had a beef with the music industry, and I didn't, and I don't. By playing Swan, but I was more comfortable playing this evil little bastard who steals the music. I just,
Yeah.
it was delicious. It's a delicious role.
Yeah. Well, there's a song that I heard you sing that night that I never heard, and I meant to get it into the movie, and I never could, but I thought it was such an interesting song for someone who battled and is in recovery from alcoholism and addiction, and I know that there probably aren't too many people here that haven't dealt with that problem in their family. Or
Addiction in the music
lives.
business? Give me a break. I'm beginning to paint us with that brush.
But you want to do a little Phantom thing? Yeah. Yeah.
Half asleep, I hear a voice. Is it only in my mind? Or is it someone calling me? Someone I failed and left behind. To work it out, I let them in. All the good guys and the bad guys that I'd been. All the devils that disturbed me and the angels that defeated them somehow come together in me now.
Yeah, and you know, when I was in that audience in Winnipeg, and I heard the line, all the devils that disturb me and the angels that defeated them somehow come together in me now, I don't know where lines like that come from.
You know, at the time, you know, it was about the characters in the film, but you know, I think we have an unconscious connection to what we create. You know, and all of you as filmmakers and as songwriters, composers, whatever, I think we have this, and God knows it may come from infancy. You know, that there is this unconscious connection to our own inner struggles, some which have evolved to the point where we can recognize them at a surface level, which for me was you know, and actually 22 years ago tomorrow, I had the rare gift of waking up instead of coming to. I celebrate 22 years sobriety tomorrow. The world is a safer place for sure. And, you know, but I've been given this amazing gift of recovery. I've been, you know, this whole Lazarus element is a huge part of my life, and I see it. It's interesting because it kind of reappears in themes, like, you know, like there was an unconscious awareness or an unconscious connection to the struggle and the rebirth and all that kind of shows up in my songs, you know. And you know, as I'm bopping around Hollywood doing the gong shows and things like that, you know, I got further and further away from, you know, from that place where I was developing the craft of songwriting. But when I look at the songs, even in the midst of that, even in the 70s, you look at something like a sailor too far from the sea song. Don't even try to find it. Like a sailor too far from the sea. I'm homesick when I'm home, but I don't know where it is I'd like to be. There was some sort of a hunger that I found myself kind of reaching for and looking for. Oh, God. But that's okay. But I think it was a hunger that I tried to satisfy with drugs and alcohol, you know, and behavior that I'm not really proud of, you know. But thank God I survived that. And it's interesting that as we, you know, as we wander through this life and you know, we follow our creative path, the amazing thing is the first real gift of songwriting to me, that, you know, there's three gifts. You know, the first is therapy. I mean, it's like, this this need gets rolled out in songs, and you have a sense of not only of finding you can do what you do, but you also have this opportunity, if you're awake, to understand more about yourself. And sometimes that takes years and years and years to get to that awake place. The second place, and I have to mention it, is that the second gift is you can make a viable living as a songwriter. And that's one of the greatest honors of my life. Is 3 years ago was elected president and chairman of the board of ASCAP. And to me, there are two things I'm extremely passionate about. One of them is obviously recovery, but the other one is music creators' rights, and I'll extend that to filmmakers' rights as well. You have a right to make a viable living with your work. You're reaching into the center of your chest and sharing pieces and parts of yourself. They're going to make this a better place to live in. And you deserve to make a viable living with that ability, with that God-given talent. And it's amazing to be in a place in my life where I can fight for that.
I do just Well, just to switch gears.
Third payment is when somebody walks up to you and says, "You know what? My little girl learned to play Rainbow Connection today." Wow.
One of the most important films of my teen years was the seminal "The Boy in the Plastic Bubble," and "The Boy in the Plastic Bubble," which I can't recommend highly enough if anyone in this room hasn't seen it, starring John Travolta as a boy in a plastic bubble, produced a song that I loved so much as a kid, and it was one of these songs that I, again, had forgotten about, but I think it was after I went to Winnipeg, I started thinking, like, holy shit, he wrote this too, and he wrote this too, and he wrote this too.
Starting note. What would they say if we up and ran away from the roaring crowd? The worn out city faces that we carried on and on, when they found out we were gone, or would they let us go? Would they tag along, or would they know to leave us alone? We'd live in the country, leave us alone. We'd make it just fine.
I like what he sings to me, personally.
Happy in a one-room shack, and we'd not look back. Now would we? I love that you love that song. Yeah, I love that John Travolta sang that song. It was like, oh my God, me and Travolta, we're like that. Yeah. That's John on top.
And how was that a gig that it was just like a phone call and, hey, you write this song and this is what the movie's about?
I wrote the song. I actually wrote the song was produced by Thomas Productions, for produced the film. Before I did that film, this is heartbreaking to admit to you, but before I did that film, I did another film for them called No Place to Run, about a grandfather raising his after his kids died, his daughter as a grandfather, and the government's going to take her, or the Child Protective Services thinks that this little boy, his grandson, needs to be put in a home, and he runs away with the little boy, and I wrote the song for that. They then sent me the next movie, The Boy in the Plastic Bubble, to write a song for it. And I said, okay, you got it. I started writing a song, and they called me back and said, you know what? Don't even bother. What you wrote for No Place to Run is perfect for Boy in the Plastic Bubble. And I went, okay.
Wow, that's incredible.
Okay. Got the afternoon off.
And then you're starting
to drink.
You're getting super hot as a songwriter. I mean, I'm skipping the songs that you just wrote as songs, like Rainy Days and Mondays, and so many great songs, but like you're getting hotter as writing for film, and you're acting. You met Burt Reynolds on Smokey and the Bandit. Was that the story?
No, I was great friends with Pat McCormick. Pat McCormick was 6'5", I'm 5'2". He was the key writer for Johnny Carson on the Tonight Show. He wrote a lot of the monologues that Johnny did. He had a bizarre and a wonderful sense of humor. Our first conscious memory, incidentally, is coming out of a bar across from him. We don't remember when we met. We came walking out of a bar called Chudney's, and it was daylight. We'd been in there all night, you know, with the beer nuts and the little ham signs and booze and breasts, and it was fabulous. And we come out into this blinding sun, and he's offering a lot of shade. And Pat McCormick, towering over me, looked down at me, and he said, "You know what, little guy? You look like an aerial photograph of a human being." It was just.
Okay, so you met Bert through Pat.
So I met Bert through, you know, and Pat was on the show Bert was on the show one night. I had met him before. I actually met Bert
on
the Dinah Shore show. I was the co-host of Dinah, a revolving co-host. She had a daytime show for a while, and I had met him, I think, on that show. And then when he saw Pat McCormick and I, he said, "This is we have a potential to now involve ourselves in a piece of high art called Smokey and the Bandit. Why don't you come along?" And so I did Smokey and the Bandit 1, 2, and even worse. And
yeah, but the song that I'm talking about, you wrote for a movie Burt Reynolds called The End, which was kind of for him a comedy, but a much more serious comedy. And this is a song that's a very sad song. And he told me that you actually wrote it thinking that he was ending a relationship at the time.
Well, he had a long-term relationship with Dinah Shore, and they broke up. But you know, it was such a classy lady, and they stayed friends for years. So in this film, he's dying, and
And also, let me say, it's a movie about movies, right? The End. And so Another Fine Mess was with Laurel and Hardy.
No, the movie has nothing to do with movies. It's a movie about a guy dying, and he doesn't want to suffer, so he tells a friend to kill him, and then he keeps changing his mind and trying to escape Don DeLuise, who is running after him with a hatchet. But the song, "Here's another fine mess I'm into, honey. A little bit sad, it's a little bit funny. Sit and listen if you want it." Well, you know what? I have to look at the lyrics. I just realized. Are they in here?
Yes.
Let me see if I can find them. "Here's another fine mess I'm into, honey. A little bit sad, it's a little bit funny. Sit and listen if you want to know the score. It's a story that you probably heard before. Another fine mess I stumbled into. Sorry to state, as I've ever been to. I'm a fighter, but they got me on the floor. I don't believe I'm gonna take this anymore.
Yeah, beautiful.
Wave goodbye. Don't try to talk. What's there? Yeah, we could.
Yeah, okay.
But let me
find
just
that one, but...
let me point out one little bit of a lyric in here. Here's another fine mess, not my choosing. We love for a while. You can't call that losing. If I knew our love was going to end this way, I'd live it over and I wouldn't change a day. Wave goodbye. Don't try to talk. What's there to say? The words are unimportant. It's the feeling we'll remember anyway.
Yeah, it's really heartbreaking.
I call it "Here's Another Fine Mess" because it's kind of a Laurel and Hardy movie.
Yeah.
In the comedy of it, but the reference to I'd live it over and I wouldn't change a day is
Yeah.
We have relationships like that in our lives that come to an end, and it's so many times you walk out of those relationships with it ended. It must be somebody's fault. Oh, that's right, it's yours. Grr. And you get a little older, you get a little wiser, and maybe you start looking at it and go, you know what? It's what it was. It was perfect love, and a perfect love won't always last forever. Philosophical moment brought to you by Paul Williams.
Paul got hired to do a lot of different stuff for TV, the classic, the McLean Stevenson show, who can forget Condo. But I just want to mention, there's one song, maybe one of Paul's most famous songs that I didn't put in the film, but he always jokes on stage that it's the song that put his kids through private school. I'm going to sing it.
Love, exciting and new. Come aboard. We're expecting you. I say love, life's sweetest reward. Let it flow, give it away. It flows back to you, everybody. take a moment, a commercial, a brief commercial. You're in East Guadalupe, Canada, or North Papalubo, Illinois. You've been up all night drinking, the TV's still on from the night before. You've fallen asleep watching, God knows what, but and you wake up and you hear at 10 o'clock in the morning, and you go, thank you, God, it's nice to be working. That, in a story, is the essence of what ASCAP does for its composers, songwriters, and music publishing membership. 430,000 members who, when their music is performed around the world, we collect the royalties for that and distribute it to the members. I've been a member of ASCAP since 1972, and it's spectacular because, I wrote The Love Boat with Charles Fox. Charlie Fox wrote Killing Me Softly. I mean, God, what an amazing writer. He wrote I Got a Name. Wow. And then with me, he wrote The Love Boat. But every time they play that puppy...
Did you write My Fair Share with him?
I wrote My Fair Share, yeah.
This is another one of his songs that's from this obscure basketball movie, One-on-One with Robbie Benson. But it was a song when I was a little kid. I had the 78 and whatever the fuck, I had the 45. I would play it over and over and over. And we were in the Philippines, and I was like, oh my God, Paul, you wrote My Fair Share. And that night he sang it on stage for me, and that's when I knew he was starting to hate me less.
Lost as a child's first thought. I must have arms to hold me. I'm lost without loving care. I must have my fair share.
Yeah, and My Fair Share, I mean, that, do you know where that...
Fair is a changing word.
Well, we have so many things to go through, really.
Charles Fox, a gorgeous melody.
Do you remember where that line, lost as a child's first thought, came from? Because that line trips me out when I start to think about it.
I don't. I recognize the feeling. I don't know whether, I had an interesting experience when I got sober and was asked to write the first project, if I could jump to this, because it really applies. There's something about trusting our instincts as creators, I think, that is spectacularly important. When I got sober, a little while after I got sober, I was asked to write the song for the Muppet Christmas Carol. I mean, talk about a fortuitous, wonderful experience, because it's about Scrooge, who has this spiritual awakening and changes totally as a human being. It's kind of the process that I was in the middle of undertaking. So I read the book. I read the original Dickens book. Then I read the script, and Disney said we're going to start this out. We really want a song about Scrooge. So the shot you see in the opening of the picture, you see Scrooge's feet, and he comes out and he's going around in this muddy, snowy, path walking to work. And as he goes by these little characters, they seem to get cold. It's just his essence. And I sat down and I went, okay, big amigo, hold on, Chris, I want to actually do this without music because I'll be trying to find the note instead of talking. But what I did was I totally turned it over to my unconscious, or to creative spirit, or Mother, Father, God, or Doodah, whatever you want to call it. I said, I'm going to get out of the way. I know that somewhere in there you've got the information. Let me know when you have an idea. I hope you're in the mood to write today. And I picked up a Lawrence Block novel and I started writing. And we started reading, rather. And about 3 pages in it, I shut the book and I went, when a cold wind blows, it chills you to the bone. But there's nothing in nature that freezes your heart like years of being alone. Wow, that's not bad. I don't know who you are, but can you do it again? It paints you with indifference like a lady paints with rouge. And the worst of the worst, the most hated and cursed, is the one that we call Scrooge. Oh, there goes Mr. And it rolled out of me almost verbatim the way it is in the film. And at that point, I think that I really got a clear focus on what is a big part of my creative philosophy, if you will, is that everything you need to be creatively who you are at its peak. And I'm not saying we don't require, schooling and all that, but within you, you have this amazing creative energy, and for me to get out of the way and really trust in that information to emerge in the process was a huge lesson. And I applied it first, to elements of my life and then to elements of my career, and now the two of them kind of rolling together, and it makes life easier.
Yeah, and I've also gotten so much creatively out of watching you work, and that you just work. You keep writing, you don't judge your work, and you trust that it's going to keep coming. It's really helpful.
Sometimes work on the way to work is just that, work on the way to work, which is on its way to what will inevitably, I may write a really awful song today, that is a song tomorrow that has pieces of something I learned along the way.
Yeah.
That will emerge as something I'm pleased with.
Yeah.
Although I like everything. Cut that verse out of your mind. That's the Nobel Prize winning moment.
Well, that sounds like a conversation you might have had with Barbara Streisand at some point, so maybe we could just talk a little bit about, everybody knows you wrote Evergreen and it won an Oscar and all that, but it is interesting
I think we could dwell on it if you'd like to.
Well, how about you tell the story about how you want to tell the story about how she flipped the lyrics, you want to tell the story about how she only wanted you to write one song, but you came ready to write
I got a phone call while I was being outfitted for a tuxedo, and I was like, this is, from a trailer trash, all of a sudden I'm in my own house being fitted for a tuxedo. The phone rings, my wife comes in. It's Barbara Streisand. I go, oh my God. Hi, how are you, Barbara? Yeah. She said, look, you wrote a song called You and Me Against the World. I said, yes. She said, there's a scene in this movie I'm going to do with Chris Robertson. We're going to do a remake of A Star Is Born. There's a scene where I find a song that Chris's character, John Norman Howard, has written, and I find it after he's dead, and we'd love something like You and Me Against the World. Could we meet and talk about that? Well, what I heard was, with my unbridled ego, I'd like you to write the songs for Star Is Born. So I showed up with a script that was totally marked up with this song will be about that, this song will be about that, Chris's music will be like this, your music will be like that, and they looked at me like, who is this gnome with all these ideas that is just saying about this, And they said, would you excuse us for a minute? I went out and I, sat in the next room, I ate macadamia nuts, drank white wine, and they called me back in, and they said, you're not intimidated. And I said, what do you mean? I said, no. I said, well, fact is, looking back on it, I'm sure I was intimidated to death. That's why I needed the white wine and macadamia. Feed yourself in this moment of life-changing, whatever. But I was hired to be music supervisor and to write the songs. For the music supervisor was not in the sense of music supervisor today. She was trying to find some word that would describe me being hired to write the songs, or as many as I did.
Right.
And for me, the moment with Evergreen is when she sat down with the guitar. She was just learning to play and fighting to find the chords. Went da da dee da 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 dee da da. And I'm like, yeah.
And she wrote the lyrics you wrote the lyrics in a different order and she flipped them, right?
Well, no, I wrote them, she didn't flip them, I flipped them. Au contraire, mon père. I flipped them.
Oh.
What I wrote was, love fresh as the morning air, love soft as an easy chair. And I went, that doesn't sing great. Love fresh as the morning air, love soft as an easy chair. But love soft as an easy chair, love fresh as the morning air. Morning sang better there. So I flipped them and everything, and I called her. I was getting ready to go on tour with Lydia and John. I called her. She was on the set, and she actually recorded that whole live. But I called her and I said, what about flipping the two lines? She said, great idea. Click. Well, how about that part where I'm fabulous? Wait a minute. The other thing that I remember, it's a great story, it's my favorite song that I wrote with Kenny Asher. I wrote most of the songs for Star Is Born, and I wrote You and Me Against the World with Kenny Asher. And Kenny and I wrote a song called With One More Look at You, which is my favorite song in the movie. It's my wife's favorite song. And And I had the, I would always have I'd have a first verse on a napkin and I'd have a second verse on a matchbook cover. And she said, do you ever sit down and just type things up and give it to a human being? And I said, no, I get the ideas and I write them down there. But I typed up the lyric to With One More Look at You, and I marked, I think, 3 lines that I put next to These Can Be Better. And I sang her the lyric, and she went, there are 3 lines that can be better. And she named those 3 lines, and I went, okay, this is spectacular. That's,
Wow.
But With One More Look at You came from the original Stars one with Judy Garland. James Mason would say, I just want to take another look at you, and it was like she'd flutter her eyelashes. My wife's favorite song that I've ever written. With one more look at you, I could learn to tame the clouds and let the sun shine through. Leave a troubled past, and I might start anew. I'll solve the mysteries if you're the prize, Marianne. Refresh these tired eyes with one more look at you. I want to just jump to the end. There's a verse at the end that's Mariana's favorite. With One More Look at You, I would learn to change the stars and change our fortunes too. Have the constellations paint your portrait too. So all the world might share that wondrous sight. Big idea. The world could end each night with one more look at. I can still every now and then connect to that emotion where it makes me teary. It's embarrassing, but true.
Oh,
I'm really proud of that line about the stars. I like that line.
It's great.
Chris Caswell, guys. He's amazing.
For those of you who perform live on stage, you should know that, just this morning I called Kaz. I said, I want to do this song, this song, this song. I know you don't do this in your act. Do you remember this? Do you remember this? And Paul, the same thing this morning. Hey, could you sing this? You do a little of this. And so I thank both of you guys for just kind of winging it this morning. Thank you. Well, since I know we're getting towards the end, I want to save a little bit of time. I have to fast forward through stuff like Emmett Otter. I don't know if there are huge Emmett Otter fans here, or even Ishtar, which I love.
She
so
said,
much.
come look, there's a wardrobe of love in my eyes. Take your time, look around, try to find something your size.
And of course, the Muppet Movie, which produced The Rainbow Connection, which I don't even care if everybody knows you sing The Rainbow Connection, but the song that I was hoping you'd sing a little of was I'm Going to Go Back There Someday, which is such a heartbreaking song.
You know what, the story of this song is Kenny Asher and I were met with Jim Henson, and Frank Oz and Jerry Jewell, who wrote the script, were sitting in my den up above the Hollywood, up above the strip, and going through, what's the movie going to be about? Well, let's do a road picture. I mean, it was literally sitting down, okay, we'll start out with Kermit in the swamp, and an agent rose up in a rowboat and says, they're looking for frogs, wanting to become rich and famous. Okay, blah, 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 like that. So and I said to Jim, and it's one of the lines that one of the moments I will never forget in my life. I said to Jim Henson, we're really excited about this, but I won't just surprise you with this. I will, as I'm working on the songs with Kenny, we'll give them to you so you can see what you think. And he went, oh no, I'll hear them in the studio. I trust you guys. In the world we live in today especially, to find that kind of creative freedom and that kind of trust is just unheard of. But Kenny and I, for me, Dave Goelz performs and created a character called Gonzo. Gonzo is a landlocked bird. Thank you very much. I think I'm a landlocked bird. I think you're a landlocked bird. I think we are, as human beings, we are landlocked birds. We wish we could be flying. And there's a scene in the movie where Gonzo and all the Muppets break down in the middle of the desert on their way to Hollywood, and they're out there under the stars at night. And so Kenny and I thought, what if Gonzo just has this moment of looking at the sky and it reflects on it? And so we wrote this. This looks familiar. I need to find the key, so. Was that right? always surprises me. This looks familiar, vaguely familiar, almost unreal yet. It's too soon to feel yet, close to my soul, and yet so far away. I'm going to go back there someday. The third verse. There's not a word yet for old friends who just met, part heaven, part space. And have I found my place? You can just visit, but I plan to stay. And I'm going to go back there someday. Now the wonderful thing that happens with this movie is I sing the song for Jim Henson and he goes, you know, that's really touching. Wouldn't it be amazing if Gonzo had some sort of realistic, moment in life that kind of inspires this reflection? What if we do like, if he buys a bunch of helium balloons and experiences flight, we could do like a state fair scene. So we wrote a state fair scene where he meets Piggy, where Bob Hope plays an ice cream salesman, where Richard Pryor plays a balloon salesman, where there's all this activity that was inspired by him saying, you know what, that song deserves to be in there. Understand, there was never a moment with Jim Henson where he said, write for children, write for people, I don't write for gender, I don't write for age. And part of that I learned from the brilliance of Jim Henson.
Wow. Well, your most recent film, Paul Williams Still Alive, it was no small task to title the film, and I must have, with my friends, gone through 1,000 titles, and people going, no, 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 no. The very last title was Paul Williams Still Alive, and I instantly said, it's so obvious to me. How am I going to get him to agree to this? And I told it to him, and he said, no, 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 no. And then he said, if I could write a song that has the word still alive in it, I'm okay with it. And about a week before we opened at the Toronto Film Festival, where we had our world premiere, Paul said, okay, I've got a song. We went into a studio, and he did one take of the song, and that's the song at the end of the movie.
Lawrence Stewart played guitar.
So I'm going to walk off for a second. I'm going to let you sing the song by yourself, and then we'll take a couple of questions, and we'll sign some posters out front.
Right.
So I love this song.
Well, thank you. This is, when I was nominated for an Emmy a couple years ago, Tom Hanks saw me, and I'd written a thing for the Muppets called A Muppet Christmas Letters to Santa. I wrote the story and the songs and wrote the teleplay. Was nominated. I'm sitting in the audience, and Tom Hanks came up to me and he went, "Oh my God, you're still alive." In the movie, there's a moment I walk on stage and I went, "Still alive." So when he asked me about this, I thought, I don't know. But then I realized still alive is also a metaphor for what I've experienced, the gift of my recovery. If you haven't seen the film, there's footage where I sit and I watch myself in a horrific state of grandiose, obscenely arrogant behavior, loaded to the gills, joking about infidelity to my family. It's pretty hard to watch. I don't know you in those clothes. I don't know you with that hair. Two-dimensional reflection, unforgiving, unaware. Part-time dreamer, would-be player. You thought fame could outrun fear. Something clearly terrified you. Did you choose to disappear? Guess again. Guess again. You made friends, and some still ask about you now and then. Well, you sang a pencil promise that you thought you might erase. Left a fault line on your future. Someday heartache you would face. Oh, well, I just lost my place. Wait a minute, someday heartache you would face. Earned a black belt in disaster. Wound up acting like a jerk. It's a fact of life. Your final act is gonna need some work. Hey, where have you been? Where have you been? Learning lessons on the road to hell and back again. And someone asked me once, where do we go when we arrive? If you're lucky, when it's over, the dreamer's still alive. A blessed mystery, for sweeter souls did not survive. But if you're lucky, when it's done, somehow deep inside, the dreamer's still alive. Once reality's your roommate, and the truth stands at your door. All your records may be broken, trophies won't shine anymore. New beginnings are the challenge, but you're not sure where to start. Unimagined gifts are waiting. Love will find your grateful heart. And then again, once again, you will come to know the simple man you've always been. And someone asked me once, where do we go when we arrive? If you're lucky, when it's over, the dreamer's still alive. A blessed mystery, for sweeter souls did not survive. But if you're lucky, when it's done, somehow deep inside, the dreamer's still alive. The anger will be gone, and the cynic will move on. And if you're lucky, thank you.
Anybody have, I think we have a couple of minutes for questions. Does anybody want to ask a question? There's people with mics in the audience that it helps with their podcast. Any questions?
Yes, sir.
Oh. Well, hi Paul, my name's Will White, and I'm also a singer-songwriter, but when I saw the panel and I saw that you were coming, I wanted to kind of pick your brain, because most of your songs in your catalog are beautifully written, but they also have these beautiful, haunting melodies. So my question to you is which came first in the writing process? Was it the lyrics or was it the melody?
Sammy Kahn used to say, what comes first is the phone call, you know. A great answer, because for a large part of my life it was writing for hire, writing for specific projects and all that. At this point, what I've discovered, especially, I love Nashville. I credit Nashville with bringing me, after I got sober and felt like I was done with music, went and started working as a drug and alcohol counselor. I was through with music, I thought. I went to Nashville. There's something in the water, there's something in the hearts of the people there. But what happened is I began sitting down and writing with people that I didn't know. And I went through it, at that point in my career, after most of my major success, I went through what was in a sense an apprenticeship for me, of learning to connect with people and write. And I write in every fashion. People will send me a melody and I will sit down and listen to that. And as a prosthetist, will find words in that melody. But perhaps the single greatest part of writing for me today is to sit down with somebody that I don't know, 10 o'clock in the morning, and I assume a lot of you have done it. You're sitting there, and you're sitting across from somebody that maybe you've never seen before, or somebody you've sat there with a bunch of times and he never has a decent idea. And all of a sudden, one of you says something that inspires something that somebody else says, and all of a sudden you are caught up in that mystical, amazing experience of creating a song. And I get very Jiminy Cricket about this whole process, that we are, I think, incredibly courageous people. We dare to share whatever's going on in here, with great abandon. And, I I say trust your instincts. Write in all sorts of fashions, whatever works for you, and you'll find your own path in this. I work in all sorts of different ways, you know. Kaz and I have written where he would write me a melody, you know. He and I have been working with Daft Punk recently, and Kaz is a wonderful orchestrator, and all they will give me a melody, and I'll write lyrics. But it's always different, and there's more of a sense of community in it for me these days than ever before.
Well, I mean, I just want to say that's such a great question about songwriting, and it's such a great answer, and I know we're out of time, so maybe if you have a question for Paul, you can ask him outside, but thank you all.
Is that it?
Grab one more?
Got one more?
Okay.
We have time for one more.
Yeah,
I live near Mentor and Lynn, and I wondered how music runs in the family. What got him into it?
Your mentor?
Did you
Paul's
get- yeah.
brother, let me just say, Paul's brother wrote the classic rock song Drift Away.
Just, you know, I mean, I keep saying to him, you know, that bridge sounds like me. Are you sure I wasn't in the room when you wrote it? And he goes, get away from me, get away from me. It's, you know, at the top of my wish I wrote list is my brother's song, Drift Away. It is a stunning, you know, Mentor was involved in music probably before I was. I mean, he was 15 years old singing living over a bar up in Red River, New Mexico, singing in the bar during the day. If they found out how old he was, they would have tossed his old butt out of there. But he is passionate about it. He's had other hits. He wrote Where Have You Been? He wrote When We Make Love for Alabama. He's had some great country hits as well. We have that. We've tried writing together, but it usually ends in a fist fight. We just have to play golf together these days.
Well, thank you, Paul Williams. Thank you,
Steve Kessler.